Hello, my dear students. I'm Dr. Vaishali Bharambe. I've been teaching anatomy for more than 25 years and I love it. Today, we are going to discuss the anatomy of liver. Liver, being such a peculiar organ, often kind of stumps you. Let's make it easy because it may be peculiar, but it's very, very relevant. So, we really need to learn it. Before we go any further, I want to inform you, all of you, that in case you like the lecture, the MCQs and notes related to this lecture are available on my website. Notes in the form of the same handouts. So whatever you've seen on the video, you will get the PowerPoint of it in the form of handouts. So in case you feel that the written word is now required for your study, use the written word. Just remember, you must study and move forward. Okay, so all right, with that tiny little lecture, that's my website, vbanatomy.com. Let's begin. So first question is, if I say it's such a relevant organ, what exactly should you know about it? So yes, you should know the basic anatomy of it. You should know the microscopic structure about which there is a separate lecture. And you should know all this. See, what is it? Portocaval anastomosis, quinoid segments, portal vein, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, peritoneal spaces, surgical anatomy of liver from point of view of liver surgeries. All of this is covered in separate lectures. So once you've got the anatomy in place, you can quickly jump to these lectures which are comparatively short and you can get the anatomy quickly. Okay, just remember again, study and move forward. Okay, right. So, liver, where is it? Liver is a wedge-shaped organ present in the upper right corner of the abdomen, performing endocrine as well as exocrine functions. I'm sure you know that. Exocrine meaning, what does it do? Yes, that's taught you in school years, right? So it produces bile. Endocrine functions, that there are so many. Just remember, it's a very important part of your metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, hormones, and so on. That's the liver. All metabolic activities happen in the liver, and this results in generation of some amount of heat. So, regulating your body temperature is also one of the functions of liver. Right. So, let's come to the anatomy of it. Where is it situated? Now, think of those 9 segments that are taught to you for abdomen. So, the liver is present in the right hypochondrium, epigastrium, and a little bit of left hypochondrium. Look at the image here to understand. So it's covered by 7th to 11th ribs and covered by intercostal spaces. What is this? It's a wedge. I told you it's a wedge-shaped organ. So now this wedge-shaped organ has all these surfaces, okay? Anterior, superior, posterior, inferior, right lateral. Now see if you can recognize these on this wedge, okay? So here is the anterior surface. Therefore, this should be the superior surface. This should be the posterior surface. This should be the inferior and right lateral. So this is the basic, very easy. Anterior, superior, posterior, inferior, right lateral. Simple, okay? And then they are separated by certain borders. Just remember one thing. All borders are not clearly visualized, and that is the challenge. There are only 3 borders which are somewhat well visualized. Inferior border, very sharp, very well visualized. That's the border you will be able to recognize very easily, separating the anterior surface from the inferior surface. This is the posterior-superior border, okay, separating superior from posterior. Posterior-inferior border, separating posterior from inferior. All this seems like a lot of words. When you see it actually on diagrams, you will be able to understand very easily. Forget the rest of the borders, you don't anyway need them, okay? First question that is asked you many times in the exam, place the organ in its normal anatomical position. Now imagine that you picked up the wedge-shaped liver. Remember, the smaller end of the liver should come on the left, the larger part of it should come on the right, okay? Now, the sharp border should be placed inferiorly. Remember I told you, sharpest border is the inferior border. There's a small triangular area of liver which is bare. Of course, we'll be discussing it. Place the bare area on the right and posteriorly and now. Place this, you will find a groove for inferior vena cava in the liver. Place your forceps through the groove and keep your forceps vertical. If you are able to do that, then your liver is in the right position. Remember, the right lobe will be slightly higher than the left. If you can manage that, fine. If you can't, leave it. Just ensure your forceps is in the inferior vena cava and the forceps is vertical. Okay, so that's the normal anatomical position of liver. Maths, you must be thinking, ma'am, maths chhod ke 2 baras ho gaya. We've left maths and still you're teaching us maths. Maths is very much a part of our life. There's no getting away from it. So take a look. What is the normal weight of the liver in an adult male? About 1.4 to 1.8 kg. Obviously, use your common sense. In the female, it will be slightly lesser, 1.2 to 1.4 kg. What about a newborn? Hardly 150 gram. Is it relevant? It's relevant from point of view of how much proportion of your body weight is the liver. That is relevant. So, in a newborn child, it is 1/18th of the body weight. Okay. In an adult, it is 1/36th of the body weight, which means that as you grow older, the comparative size of the liver ideally somewhat reduces. Okay. Asked in the exams. In case you're wondering why am I teaching you all this, it will be asked in your vivas. Right. So how do I plan to teach you liver? Liver is always studied as surfaces, borders, lobes and fissures. So I'm going to teach you surfaces and everything else will be taught along the surfaces. It becomes much easier that way. Remember, all these surfaces that you see in the liver can be basically divided into parietal and visceral. Parietal, which are related to which are all different surfaces, and visceral is that part of the liver which is related to other viscera. Okay, so for example, just imagine your liver is here, so it will be related to stomach, it will be related to duodenum, colon. That surface which is related to all these organs is called as the visceral surface, and everything else is somewhat related to the body wall and is called as the parietal surface. How many parietal surfaces? Close your eyes, imagine. Anterior, superior, posterior, right lateral. Okay? Use your imagination, try and visualize the liver in your body. Don't just mug it up. After a point of time, you will lose orientation. Okay? So yes, now this is my wedge-shaped liver. I want to start with the superior surface. You know that below your lung is the diaphragm. Below the diaphragm on the right side is your liver. So here is the superior surface of liver, slightly higher on the right side than on the left side. So just behind it, you will see the inferior vena cava. And as the falciform ligament gets attached to the anterior surface of liver, see how the falciform ligament divides into two layers, one layer going to the right and one layer going to the left. Okay, so we are seeing the same thing now. This is the anterior surface, falciform ligament, dividing into layer going on the left, layer going on the right. Layer going on the left forms the left triangular ligament. The layer going on the right forms the superior layer of coronary ligament. Okay, and if you join these two, there is formation of the posterior-superior border of liver. Posterior-superior border of liver. Now take a look at the image. Okay, can you see that there is a green patch here? This entire green patch is the superior surface of liver. So superior surface is separated from the posterior surface by posterior-superior border. Is that easy for you? I hope so. Okay, so that's the posterior-superior border. And this is the superior surface of liver. The superior surface of liver will be related to the lung, the pleura, and somewhere in the middle to the heart. I'm sure you know all these simple things, but I put them in place for you to get a mind image of the liver and its relations. Right. So we now move from superior to the right lateral surface. The right surface of the liver related to the right side body wall. Okay. So the right surface here okay, is separated from the diaphragm by a small little peritoneal recess shown by the blue arrow. And then beyond it's related to the body wall. Divide that body wall into upper one third, middle one third, lower one third. Upper one third extends till the eighth rib. Okay, till this level, your right lung is going to be related to liver. Understand it, this is very important. Till the 10th rib, the right costodiaphragmatic recess, see the costodiaphragmatic recess, this can extend down. And below the 10th rib, the liver is related directly to diaphragm. How does it matter? Now remember, the principle of liver biopsy is avoid damage to the lung. Okay, so where will you put in the needle so that you can avoid damage to the lung? You will have to put it below the 8th rib. So the needle is put either in the 9th intercostal space or in the 10th intercostal space so that you completely avoid the lung. Okay. Your needle will go in the mid-axillary line with the patient doing forced expiration. Ask your patient to breathe out. Okay, so that further the right lung rises up. If it will expand, it will come down, right? If you breathe out, the lung will become a little shorter, lesser chance of you damaging the lung. So students, there's a separate video on this called the surgical anatomy of liver biopsy. It's a very short video. So in case you want to quickly understand liver biopsy, just you can access that and take a look at it quickly. Continuing, so we've learned about the right lateral surface. We've learned about liver biopsy. We now go to the anterior surface. So this is the anterior surface you are seeing, which clearly shows the attachment of falciform ligament. Okay, so here, take a look. On the right side, it's covered from 6th to 10th rib. It's covered by 6th to 10th rib on the right side. Of course, slightly by the liver, by the lungs as well as the pleura. On the left side, it's covered by 7 to 8 costal cartilages. You should be able to feel that in your abdomen. Do that, okay? And of course, it's also related to your xiphoid process. So that's where your liver is. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying the lung. There. That's the anterior surface of the liver. And you will observe that attached to the anterior surface is the falciform ligament. Now we're going to discuss this very important ligament. When you open the abdomen, you see falciform ligament, and you are in such an early stage of learning that sometimes you don't understand what is the demonstrator talking about. So it's a double fold of peritoneum which goes and gets attached to the anterior surface of liver, dividing you can see it here also. See, this is a transverse section through the abdomen. Can you see this double fold of peritoneum from the left as well as from the right? It is attaching the anterior body wall to the liver through this double fold, which is called as falciform ligament. So falciform ligament is somewhat sickle shaped, extends from the umbilicus to the lower border of liver and contains within its right free margin the left umbilical vein and the paraumbilical veins. Now you must be wondering, what is all this? So my suggestion is there is a separate lecture on fetal circulation. A lot about this left umbilical vein is taught there. Paraumbilical veins are taught in the portocaval anastomosis. You can discuss that. Meanwhile, I'm going to give you a very brief explanation for this. Paraumbilical veins are veins that are draining into the left branch of portal vein. At the level of the umbilicus, they are able to communicate with veins which are draining your anterior abdominal wall. Thus, portal vein and systemic venous circulation communicate with each other through these paraumbilical veins. Similarly, left umbilical vein is actually a vein which was carrying oxygenated blood from the placenta to the fetus. Once the child is born, this vein gets obliterated, leaving behind a ligament called ligamentum teres hepatis. Any other ligamentum teres you are aware of? Ligamentum teres femoris. See if you can remember what that is. Right. So here we are seeing the falciform ligament attached anteriorly to the liver. If you carry it behind the liver, you will find it is continuous with a fissure for ligamentum teres hepatis and superiorly fissure for ligamentum venosum. Together, all these three structures divide your liver into right 5/6 and left 1/6. Take a look. Right 5/6 and left 1/6. These are anatomical lobes of liver. This is asked in your exams. You must understand. We'll do this again. Okay. So what is ligamentum teres hepatis? What is ligamentum venosum? Understand. So one last time. Ligamentum teres hepatis is a remnant of left umbilical vein. Ligamentum venosum. Again see, blood was coming from the fetus. Okay. The blood was coming from the placenta. As it came to the liver, it developed a method of bypassing the liver and draining directly into IBC. Why bypass the liver? Because all the oxygen would be used up. So there was a separate duct which would bypass the liver and drain directly into inferior vena cava and reach the heart. This duct was called ductus venosus. And this, at the time of birth, gets obliterated to form ligamentum venosum. Again, more about this is taught in the lecture on fetal circulation. Do watch that as well. So now let's do the anatomy again. Here you are seeing the anterior surface of liver and you can see the falciform ligament getting attached to it. And in its free margin, see here, you can see the ligamentum teres hepatis. Now, here I've turned the liver completely. We are watching it from posteriorly now. You can see a groove here, which is the groove for ligamentum venosum, containing the ligamentum venosum, remnant of ductus venosus. This is the ligamentum teres. Okay. Inside it, you will have the ligamentum teres, which is remnant of left umbilical vein. As you keep repeating this, you will find yourself remembering this, which is asked often. Okay. Because of these two and the falciform ligament anteriorly, you can divide your liver anatomically into right lobe, which is very large, and left lobe, which is only 1/5 of the whole liver. So these are the right and left lobes of liver. Now I want to bring your attention to this structure here, a small quadrangular bit of liver, and this structure, which is another quadrangle. The top quadrangle is called caudate lobe and the lower one is called quadrate lobe. Okay. As per anatomical division of liver, the caudate as well as quadrate lobes belong to right lobe of liver. As we move further and study some more, we will discuss more details about caudate and quadrate lobes. If you're liking the lecture, do like and subscribe and share this lecture with any one friend. Right. So what have we discussed up till now? We discussed superior surface, right lateral surface and liver biopsy, anterior surface, falciform ligament, ligamentum teres hepatis, ligamentum venosum, caudate and quadrate lobe. This is what we've done. Let's now go further into details of the liver. Take a deep breath. Imagine where is your liver. Imagine your anterior surface, superior surface, right lateral surface. And now let's go back to the posterior-superior and posterior-inferior borders and therefore the posterior surface. Okay. Now we're looking at this liver from posteriorly. You can see that there is a border which is going to the left and a border which is going to the right. You remember I told you how the falciform ligament covers the anterior surface and as it reaches above, it divides into one layer that goes to the left and one layer that goes to the right. Correct? So these are the same layers and together they form the posterior-superior border of liver. We've done that. Therefore, the surface anterior to it is the superior surface of liver. Similarly, you will find a border extending from the right triangular ligament just above the porta hepatis, along the ligamentum venosum, onto the left triangular. This border is the posterior-inferior border of liver. And the surface between the two is the posterior surface of liver. You have to understand this because posterior surface is very important. So what is important about posterior surface? What should you learn about it? So that's the surface. From the right to left, what should you know? You should know the bare area, groove for inferior vena cava, caudate lobe, which we've already discussed in brief, and the fissure for ligamentum venosum, and there is also groove for esophagus. All of these structures we need to discuss. Let's first begin from right, the bare area of liver. This is very important, asked very often in Vivas. What is the bare area? Question is bare? Bare of what? Bare of peritoneum. An area of the liver which is not covered by peritoneum is called as bare area. Because this particular area is very large, it's got a the attached to it. The bare area of liver. There are other bare areas as well, but first let's discuss the bare area. Okay? The bare area is bound on both the sides by superior and inferior layers of coronary ligament. See, this is superior layer of coronary ligament. This is inferior layer of coronary ligament. And the apex is where these two coronary ligaments meet to form the right triangular ligament. Don't worry, we will revise this again. And the base of this is formed by the inferior vena cava. So, superior layer of coronary ligament, inferior layer of coronary ligament, uniting to form the right triangular ligament which forms the apex. At the base, you have the groove for inferior vena cava. This triangular area that gets formed is called the bare area of liver, which as you can see is related to right suprarenal gland. It's also related to the diaphragm. It's sometimes related to the right kidney, and it is an important site of portocaval anastomosis. What is portocaval anastomosis? Now, students, that's a topic it's an entirely different big topic by itself, very, very, very relevant. So, I've made a separate video on it. Please go watch that. Okay, it's very clinically relevant, you must. But if I start discussing portocaval anastomosis now, the actual anatomy of liver will be left. So please go and watch that separately. Do not miss that. Okay, so continuing, so we got the bare area in place, triangular area, superior layer of coronary, inferior layer of coronary ligament, apex formed by right triangular ligament, base formed by inferior vena cava. Related to right suprarenal gland, diaphragm, site of portocaval anastomosis. Right. So now we come a little to the left. Posterior surface now shows me inferior vena cava. Can you see that? Now I'm going to remove the inferior vena cava and I see that below it there are a lot of veins from the liver. These are hepatic veins which are draining the liver into the inferior vena cava. Okay. They are very relevant. We will be discussing a lot about them later. Coming to the left of IBC, I come to the typical quadrangular space that I spoke about called the caudate lobe. Bound on the left by the groove for ligamentum venosum, on the right by the groove for inferior vena cava. Superiorly becomes continuous with the superior border, posterior superior border of liver. Inferiorly related to this area which is called as the porta hepatis. Okay. A part of this process projects on the right side, forming what is called the caudate process of liver, extending between the inferior vena cava and the porta hepatis. There's a question here, what is pons hepatis? See, what happens is sometimes if this is your inferior vena cava and you're watching from posteriorly, the caudate lobe is here. Sometimes it goes on to pass even behind the IVC and enclose it. This kind of anatomy is called pons hepatis. What is papillary process of liver? Very easy, find out. Otherwise, the answers will be there on the website for you to see. Now, this is your caudate lobe. It has a very peculiar peritoneal relation. Here you can see this is the greater sac and this is the lesser sac. I know greater, lesser sac, peritoneum is a bit of a challenge for all of you, but best to understand through sections like this one. So this is the greater sac and this is the lesser sac. And you can see that the caudate lobe is the only part of liver which is related to peritoneum of lesser sac. That's its peculiarity. Now let's move a little further and go to groove for ligamentum venosum. What is ligamentum venosum? A remnant of ductus venosus, a duct that was helping to bypass the liver during fetal circulation. Enough, don't need to need more at this stage. Right, so that's the fissure for ligamentum venosum, and in the floor of the fissure you can see the ligamentum venosum itself. And now this image shows you how a double fold of peritoneum from greater sac and a double fold of peritoneum from lesser sac both are anchored into the fissure for ligamentum venosum. See, I've used two different colors to maybe help you understand. That's the double fold from greater sac. That's the double fold from lesser sac. Both are entering into the ligamentum venosum fissure. Okay. So, if you were to see another image, here's your ligamentum venosum itself, and these are the two folds entering into that same groove. This is something that often stumps all of you. That's why I'm spending a little time on it. Many of you never really understand what is going on where the greater and lesser sac is concerned. If you don't understand, then you can put it at the end of the lecture, and I'll try and make a lecture for you on peritoneum as well. Right. So finally we come to the last part, groove for esophagus, which is somewhere here. So you have to imagine that from the top there is esophagus coming in, dilating out to continue into the stomach. So beyond this here you should find the stomach. So what did we learn? We did the posterior surface, which is between the posterior-superior border and the posterior-inferior border. From right to left, you saw bare area of liver, inferior vena cava, caudate lobe, fissure for ligamentum venosum, and the groove for esophagus. Bare area, inferior vena cava, caudate lobe, fissure for ligamentum venosum, and the esophagus. Got it? Right. So now we'll go a little below and now come to the visceral part of liver. Remember I told you everybody is parietal but one is visceral, which is the inferior surface. So let's understand. This here was the postero-inferior border of liver. This here is the sharp inferior border, and the area in between them is the inferior surface or the visceral surface of liver. A little bit about inferior border, which like I told you is the sharpest border of liver. This sharp border shows presence of a notch somewhat slightly to the right of midline, which is called as notch for ligamentum teres. Obviously, that's where the ligamentum teres goes into the liver. And 5 centimeter to the right of it, you find another notch, which is the notch for gallbladder. So it's a small little notch from where you can see a little bit of gallbladder protruding out. And that's how the gallbladder is visible from anterior surface. Okay. So inferior border, that's all you should really know. Don't worry about it too much. Of course, when you're palpating the liver, this is the border you're trying to feel for. Continuing with discussion on inferior surface of liver, the peculiar thing is that wherever it's related to viscera, it's peritoneal, and there are places in it where it is still bare. Remember I asked you bare from what? Bare from peritoneum. So there are areas of inferior surface which are peritoneal and areas which are non-peritoneal. So which are peritoneal? It's related here to the stomach covered by peritoneum, pylorus, duodenum, colon, right colic flexure, and right kidney, all covered by peritoneum. Okay? And then here is the gallbladder, which is by itself covered anteriorly by posteriorly by peritoneum, but where the gallbladder is actually related to liver. Were you to remove the gallbladder, you would get a bare area. Okay? So, question is, what is hepatorenal pouch of Morrison? So now take a look. This is really lovely. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. See how the liver is covered by peritoneum completely. This is the inferior border. Of course, patient is lying down in this case. And you can see how a pouch of peritoneum is extending between the liver and the right kidney. This pouch is called as the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. Ma'am, what is this? Why are we learning all this? Now imagine that the patient is lying down. Okay, this becomes the most dependent part of his abdominal cavity. And all the liver secretions or any abdominal secretions, abscesses, all of these happen here, which becomes a very common site for subphrenic abscess. Okay. So learn more about this in the lecture on subphrenic spaces and peritoneum. Okay, I will leave it at that and we will go on. So if you're liking this lecture, of course, do like and subscribe to my channel and comment on it and share your video with a friend. Inferior surface of liver has some other peculiarities as well. I want to bring your attention now to the quadrate lobe. Can you see this quadrangular area which is bound on the left for fissure for ligamentum teres, on the right by fossa for gallbladder, superiorly by porta hepatis, inferiorly by sharp border of liver. Easy, common sense. You don't need me to tell you all this. You just have to look at the liver and answer. Okay. It is quadrangular in shape. The non-peritoneal relations are fissure for ligamentum teres hepatis, porta hepatis, and the fossa for gallbladder. These are three areas which are non-peritoneal. Okay. So fissure for ligamentum teres hepatis, you can see it here. Deep in the fissure, you will find the ligamentum teres hepatis, which is for the last time obliterated left umbilical vein. Right. It's about 4 to 4.5 millimeter in width. Right. So porta hepatis, very, very important. Relax, take a sip of your coffee again and let's move forward. So here's your porta hepatis. See this area, okay, which is bound on the above by the caudate lobe, below by the quadrate lobe, on the left by the ligamentum venosum and ligamentum teres, and on the right by the gallbladder. This area is called the porta hepatis, which is the gateway to liver, the entry point into the liver. Okay, so that's the porta hepatis. Through the porta hepatis, remember DAV. All of you know there is a school in India called DAV. So the mnemonic of structures entering or leaving the liver is minimum, at least should be DAV. So duct, artery, vein. Which duct? Which artery, which vein? Entering into the liver is the hepatic artery, portal vein, and hepatic plexus of nerves. Leaving the liver are the hepatic duct, cystic duct, lymphatics of liver. Do this again, duct, DAV. Which duct? Hepatic ducts carrying bile away from liver. Which arteries? Hepatic arteries carrying blood into the liver. Which veins? Portal veins carrying blood into the liver. That's your porta hepatis. But you should know all structures entering and all structures leaving. Minimum you should know is DAV. Hepatic duct, hepatic artery, portal vein. Right. Now we move to the fossa for gallbladder, which is if you were to remove the gallbladder, you would find the fossa bare. And in this fossa, you would find the deep branch of cystic artery and vein, okay, lying between the gallbladder and the liver. Right. So what have we learnt up till now? We learnt about posterior superior border, posterior inferior border, posterior surface in between. Then we learnt about inferior border and inferior surface, structures related to the inferior surface, visceral and which are covered by peritoneum. And then we discussed the non-peritoneal. So we come to a question, how many ligaments are attached to liver? By now, you've been hearing a lot about ligaments, falciform ligament, right triangular ligament, left triangular ligament, coronary ligament, upper layer, lower layer, lesser omentum. What are all these? They are all peritoneal folds and are referred to as false ligaments. Then what are true ligaments? See, remember, the ligamentum teres hepatis and ligamentum venosum are the true ligaments of liver. I've written it as femoris by mistake. It's the hepatis. Ligamentum teres hepatis is a true ligament. Ligamentum venosum is a true ligament of the liver. So with this, we have done quite a bit. We have just barely touched on this bare, that bare. Let's put all the bare areas together, starting with the bare area, which comes as a short note, and the other bare areas. What do we mean by that? Whenever peritoneal folds come together on the liver, a small gap remains between them, which is non-peritoneal. Okay, this small gap, which is non-peritoneal, is the bare area. Okay, so it is where will you find such bare areas? between the fissure for ligamentum teres hepatis, where two folds of peritoneum meet, fissure for ligamentum venosum, line of attachment of falciform ligament, groove for inferior vena cava, groove for gallbladder, and porta hepatis. So a lot more about this is discussed in my lecture on bare areas of liver. So you can go watch that to understand this a little better. Okay. The enumeration and the bare area of liver are covered in this lecture. You can understand that here. So continuing on, now we've done the surfaces, we've done the borders, we've done quite a bit actually. Let's now go to blood supply of liver, which is the crux of the matter. It's through the blood that metabolites come in. It's through the blood that whatever is processed leaves the liver. So who supplies blood to the liver? The blood supply to liver, 75% comes from a vein, portal vein, and from the artery, hepatic artery, 25%. Venous drainage is by hepatic veins. For a new student, this can get a little confusing. How can veins supply blood? Remember, portal vein is picking up blood from your intestines. Okay? It's picking up all those metabolites which are getting absorbed and carrying it to the liver. So it's actually acting like an artery. It's carrying all that to the liver. Liver will metabolize it. And finally, the blood will leave the liver through hepatic veins to drain into inferior vena cava. Quickly learn your hepatic artery, you're expected to know it. So here's your abdominal aorta, giving rise to the celiac trunk, which gives rise to three main arteries. Left gastric. So this is the abdominal aorta. Here's your celiac trunk. It gives rise to three main arteries. Left gastric artery, splenic artery, and the common hepatic artery. The common hepatic artery now gives rise to right gastric artery, gastroduodenal artery, and whatever is left continues as the hepatic artery proper, which actually supplies the liver. As it approaches the liver, it divides into right and left hepatic arteries. The right hepatic artery giving a branch to the gallbladder called the cystic artery. Okay. So this is the hepatic artery. You must know it verbatim. Okay. Celiac artery giving rise to three branches. Left gastric, splenic, and the common hepatic. The common hepatic giving rise to right gastric, gastroduodenal, and continuing as the hepatic artery proper. Hepatic artery proper divides into right and left hepatic arteries as it enters into the liver. Right hepatic artery gives rise to a branch, the cystic artery. All of you should know this, okay? Right. Similarly, the other major supply is portal vein. How is portal vein formed? It's formed by union of superior mesenteric vein and splenic vein. The splenic vein also receives inferior mesenteric vein. So all your gut basically is coming here, okay? So here's your portal vein being formed. As it passes towards the liver, it receives superior pancreaticoduodenal, left gastric vein and right gastric vein. As you can see, left gastric vein also receives esophageal veins. Right gastric vein may also receive prepyloric vein of Mayo. The vein now reaches the liver and divides into right and left branches of portal vein. So you saw how formed by blood vessels coming from the gut, it divides into branches in the liver. The right branch of portal vein receives the cystic vein. Left branch of portal vein receives receives the paraumbilical veins. And this is how blood from your gut reaches into your liver. Much more about the portal vein, its surgical anatomy is taught in the lecture Surgical Anatomy of Portal Vein. Please see that. Okay, it will give you a lot more information about this portal vein and its clinical relevance. Then, all that blood has come into the liver, it has to leave the liver through hepatic veins. So here are your hepatic veins, right hepatic vein, middle hepatic vein, and the left hepatic vein. All these three veins drain into the inferior vena cava. So just understand in brief what are Quinault segments. Okay, so here you're seeing the main portal fissure, which actually contains the middle hepatic vein. This portal fissure is also called as cholecystocaval line. Ask yourself, okay? Cholecystocaval. Cholecysto, what is that? Gallbladder. Caval, inferior vena cava. Draw a line joining the gallbladder notch to the inferior vena cava, you'll be able to divide your liver into right and left almost equal halves. This line is also called as the Cantilese line. Okay, and this line is actually helping to divide your liver into two physiological lobes, right lobe and the left lobe. On the right side, there is one more fissure, the right portal fissure, which helps to divide this right lobe into anterior and posterior. A left portal fissure helps to divide your left lobe into lateral and medial lobes. So this is how now your one liver was divided by this Cantilese line into right lobe and left lobe. The right lobe was divided by right portal fissure into anterior and posterior. The lobe was divided by left portal fissure into medial and lateral. Try to understand all this. All these fissures, right portal fissure, main portal fissure, left portal fissure, all these portal fissures are by hepatic veins. Right hepatic vein, middle hepatic vein, and the left hepatic vein. You can see the veins there in the image to understand. Now we come to Quinaud's classification. Quinaud was a scientist, doctor, who divided your liver into 8 segments such that each segment of the liver has its own vascular flow, has its own branch of portal vein, has its own branch of hepatic artery, has its own venous drainage, a branch of a tributary of hepatic vein, and produces its own bile which drains separately into the main bile duct. So each segment was an individual entity which the principle was, were you to surgically resect this, you would not affect the functionality of the rest of the liver. Thus, there are 8 Quinaud's segments. Take a look. This is your liver. The caudate lobe is Quinaud segment 1. Now draw a line clockwise from it. So 2 and 3 are the left lateral and left anterior, left lateral inferior, sorry. I'm doing this again, okay. So if this is your liver, then 1 is your caudate lobe, 2 and 3 is the left lateral lobe, left lateral superior, left lateral inferior. 4 is your medial lobe, left medial. Now 8 and 5 or 5 and 8 are the right anterior superior, right anterior inferior. 6 and 7 are right posterior inferior, right posterior superior. Can you see 8 being formed? These are the 8 Quinaud segments. A separate lecture on these segments and a lot more is uploaded as Anatomy of Quinaud Segments of Liver. Do watch this to understand this very relevant part of liver anatomy a bit more in detail. Okay. So what about nerve supply? Liver receives nerve supply from hepatic plexus, which is made up of sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers. Its lymphatic drainage is in the form of superficial and deep. Superficial will go partly above to supradiaphragmatic lymph nodes, partly below to hepatic lymph nodes. Some go back and to the left to the celiac lymph nodes and paracardiac lymph nodes. The deeper part again below to hepatic lymph nodes, about to supradiaphragmatic lymph nodes. So now my suggestion is try and put a little logic to it. Otherwise it's difficult to remember all this, though it's very relevant. So now we come to the last question. Such an heavy organ, I just told you it weighs more than 1,800 grams in an adult human being. 1,800 grams is a little difficult to carry flying in the abdomen, right? It is not resting on any bone. It's flying actually stuck to the diaphragm. How does it do that? What are the factors that keep your liver in position? Most of the time you'll give an answer that it's the ligaments. Actually the ligaments are peritoneal. They cannot hold the liver at all. They are themselves so flimsy. The main factor that holds it in position are the hepatic veins. Okay. So the way the veins go into the IVC, it's like nailing the liver in place. So the main support is hepatic veins. Other blood vessels that are passing through the liver are very strong, holding it in position. The viscera that surrounds it, the intra-abdominal pressure surprisingly holds it up, and some of the other ligaments do help. This is another very commonly asked Viva question, and you must be prepared for it. So, knowing so much anatomy of liver, you will be surprised at how much is left. There is a lot that is left. There is a lot more you should know if you want to actually one fine day operate on the liver. So for that, a separate lecture has been created, which is Surgical Anatomy of Liver Transplant Surgeries and Liver Surgeries. You can access that as well in case you're planning on operating on the liver. Okay. Again, remember, MCQs and notes for all my lectures are now available on the website in the form of handouts. If you need a written word to study, you can access it there. If you like the lecture, do like and subscribe and share the lecture with a friend. Thank you, students. I loved taking this lecture. I hope you found it useful in your studies. I'll see you across the screen in some other video. Bye.